Hello, guys. Welcome to today's. Hello, guys. Welcome to today's session. Thank you for joining us on today's session for our web design bootcamp training. This is day three, and I'm happy we've come this far to learn more about web design using HTML and CSS. So today we'll go straight into business and discuss more about the technologies that are used to create or design websites. So, once again, welcome. And I'm your host for today. My name is Prince Will. I'm your instructor for the Web Design Bootcamp course. So, today we'll be going into the web design layout tools, right? So, we spoke during our last session, we talked about using the two main technologies for web design, which are HTML and CSS, right? Here we go to talk about the meaning of HTML as an hypertext markup language and CSS, which stands for cascading style sheets. Now, in every website always have a layout tools, and that layout tools is responsible for how that website is being laid out on your screen, right? And now the two particular layout tools that are very important in web design is called Grid and Flexbox, right? So today we're going to talk more about Grid and Flexbox, which Grid and Flexbox are two powerful layout tools used in web design to create responsive, efficient, and beautiful web pages. So we'll go ahead and try to understand what is Grid, right? So Grid is a two-dimensional system of horizontal and vertical lines that intersect to form rows and columns. Grid helps designers create balanced, harmonious, and responsive layouts by providing a structure framework for placing elements, right? So now one would think, what are the benefits of using grid in designing your website? Now, using grid in web design improves layout consistency and balance, enhances responsiveness and adaptability, simplifies design and development process, and supports complex dynamic layouts. Now, this is one of the benefits of using, or these are the benefits of using grid in terms of designing your layout. But now, what about Flexbox, right? Now, Flexbox in web design, Flexbox, also known as Flexible Box, is a CSS layout model that allows designers to create flexible, responsive layouts without using floats or positioning. Flexbox makes it easy to align, distribute, and resize elements within a container, even when the screen size or content changes, right? So it helps in how the content of a website becomes responsive, right? When I mean responsive, when it appears across different screen size, so you, like, for example, you load a website on your laptop, your tablet, or your smartphones, right? So the way it changes, Flexbox handles that responsive state seamlessly, right? That is why Flexbox and Grid are one of the best and most used technologies or tools in terms of web design layout. Now, what are the benefits? Just as we just saw the benefits of Grid, let's also see the benefits of using Flexbox in web design. Now, using Flexbox in web design simplifies layout management and alignment, improves responsiveness, adaptability, reduces CSS code and complexity, and supports dynamic, flexible layouts. Now, one thing you must understand in the concept of grid and flexbox is like, now grid is actually used for layout, right? Structure. Flexbox also is used for layout structure. Now, what's the difference when I didn't need it? Like you saw here, the difference the difference between the both of them is actually very minimal, right? Minimal in the sense that when you're trying to structure your content in a two-dimensional layout, you fall to grid. But when you're looking for a more flexible tool that can actually give you that flexibility in how your contents are being laid out, then you fall to Flexbox. Now, we've gone through the whole explanation. What about seeing how these things are applied in a more practical mode? Now we're going to jump to our code editor to start practicing with Flexbox and Grid. Now, when using Flexbox and Grid, in web design, we implement our code using CSS, right? Which is also known as cascading style sheets. Now, the first thing we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to have our content laid out, right? We're going to have our content laid out on the screen. So I will advise you, I think by now you already have your VS Code open, your code editor open, so we can start practicing. Now, yesterday we touched creating what is known as your HTML boilerplate code, right? Boilerplate code are like the code that is actually auto-generated for you to start working on. And now I taught you guys about using something known as an emmet in VS Code to auto-generate the structure of your HTML page. Now, if you've forgotten, generating the structure using emmet, you simply just hold down your shift key and the one key, right? That will give you an exclamation mark, and then you click on enter, and it gives you an auto-generated boiler code structure for your HTML file. Now we'll go ahead and just like make a little change and change our title from document to flex, or no, just change it to web design layout, since that's what we're touching today. Right now, so the first thing in terms of generating or building or designing a website is to put in mind generating content for that particular website, for you to basically see, style, basically manipulate to whichever style or point you wish. Right now, we're going to go ahead and create a heading. Right, we're going to go ahead and create the heading, and this will give us more of like the time and ability to make use of what we've learned so far on our HTML tags and elements, right? So now I'm going to create something known as a heading, right? In HTML, we create headings using the H1 tag, right? Create headings using the H1 tag. And then in your H1 tag, you actually put in the content. Now, whatever goes in between your opening and closing tag is known as what? The content. In this case, now I'm going to put in a content called display properties. Now, I'm going to also say this out. During the course of our bootcamp, we won't be able to cover all of the HTML tags. That is why yesterday I recommended visiting a platform known as MDN Docs to get more knowledge and understanding on HTML tags, and also on learning more about CSS, right? But we're basically going to cover the basics we need to know, right? And then at the end of our whole bootcamp, by the concluding time of our bootcamp session, we're going to use what we've learned so far to design a beautiful HTML CSS landing page, right? So now, when you've created this, again, I'm going to close this port, and then if you want to go live to see what you've done so far on your HTML, on your code editor, you just click on the go live button here, and it's going to open up a tab in your browser where you start seeing the different content that you'll be creating on your website, right? So now we've already implemented that. Now, in also something I need to point out too is that when you when you're creating headings, when you're creating headings in HTML, it follows a sequence, right? Now, the H1 becomes the most bigger heading in terms of size, and then you also have H2, you have H3, and you have H4, right down to H6, right? Now, we're going to also implement, just for implementation's sake, we're going to implement the H2 tag to show the size, right? To show the size. So we're going to pass in a content called properties. So you can see clearly the size between the H1 and the H2 are both like different, right? You find the H1 bigger than what the H2, right? So we're also going to implement other tags, right? We're going to implement other tags like the A tag, which this tag basically is for creating hyperlinks, right, in your web page that actually links a particular section to another section, or a particular page to what, to another page, right? I'm just going to just show you guys this brief implementation, right? I'm just going to say this is home, right? So let's assume we're creating a link to our home page, right? Now, the reason why we're passing in the hashtag here is basically because we're making, so when you want to link your um a content in your web page, right, to a different section, or a section to a different section, or a page to a different page, you actually pass in the location, right? If it's a file, you pass in the file path here. If it's a link to a different page, you pass in the page URL, right? In this particular location. But for now, we're not linking to anything. That's why we're just putting in the hashtag, which actually symbolizes blank, right? So it like stands for blank. So now we're going to go into the main business of today, which is learning about Flexbox and also learning about Grid, right? Now, we're going to go into creating we'll create a tag, an unordered list tag, right? We create an unordered list tag, and then when we create an unordered list tag, inside this unordered list, we're going to create series of list items, right? Series of items. So you list out items using the li command. This unordered list is more of like a wrapper, right? It's more of like a wrapper that actually makes those items appear in an unordered format, right? So we're going to create the li to list out these items, and we'll call this item one. Also going to call this item two, and we're also going to call this item three, and we're going to call this item four. So we just created a series of 4 items, right? And these items, we're going to use the CSS Flexbox tool to align this item in diverse ways, right? Diverse ways, and we're going to see how that is being done as I approach that now. So first of all, something I also want to point out to, in CSS, we have different ways or patterns or styles to basically style your HTML tags. Now we have what is called the inline styling format or pattern. We also have what is called the internal styling pattern, and we also have what is called the external styling pattern. The internal styling pattern, I'll just go over that quickly, is when you style your HTML tag directly from the element itself, right? By calling the style attribute, and then we'll call something known as color. So let's call it color, and then when we do that, we're going to so actually implementing this in the wrong way. So pardon me for that. So I'm going to say color, right? And then when I say color, I'll then pass in. So what color should I pass in? The last time I passed in blue because it's my favorite color. So I'm just going to pass in Cora. So let's see what happens, right? Now we can see the color of this display property just changed from black, which is the default color, to Cora, right? We see it just changed from black to Cora. Let's pass in a different color again. Let's pass in green, right? Let's pass in green. And then let's see. Okay, oh, you see it just changed from Cora to green, right? So this implementation is known as inline styling, right? It's known as inline styling. Now we also have another way, another type pattern in terms of like styling our tags. So it's also known as internal styling. In here, we're going to call the style tag, right? And inside the style tag, we're going to. So I want to show you guys something quickly. When we are talking about using CSS selectors, yeah, we talked about selectors, and then when we're talking about selectors, we talked about class, IDs, and elements, right? Now, let me run a recap on that. Using CSS selector, it's basically calling the tag, right, or selecting the elements that you want to style, by either its class name, its ID name, or the element name, right? So now I'm going to give this H2 property, this particular element, I'm going to give it a class of second. I'm going to call it second heading, right? Let's see what happens here. So I'm going to call it second heading. Remember, I said something on the very first day we started. When you're creating a class, you're identifying that class, or you're calling that class in CSS, right? Using a dot notation, right? A dot or a full stop. So you say dot second heading, right? Dot second heading, and then this time I want to use a different styling pattern. I don't want to use colors, right? We've seen what color does. So let's try font size. Let's try font size. Let's try and increase the size of our H2 element to be more than that of the H1 element, right? So let's try. Let's say 120 pixel. 120 pixel, right? We can see 120 pixel actually increase the size of our H2 element. Now, you'll be wondering, what is this 120 pixel? What happens? So in CSS uses something known as unit of measurement, right? If you've done mathematics, you'll remember like units of measurement and all of that. But in CSS uses something known as pixels, right? So the default size for a font or for a text in the web is 16 pixel, right? That's the default size. Now you can actually manipulate that size by increasing it using the CSS unit of measurement known as pixels, right? By adding the amount, right? By adding the amount or the level of how large you expect that size to be, right? Now, in this case, now I'm adding 120 pixel, right? But I can choose to take it up to down to, let's say, 50 pixel. Let's see what happens. Okay, fine. You see it's now down, but it's still bigger than the display properties, right? But I feel like you get the understanding here on how to use your style, your internal styling, your inline styling, And now we need to jump down towards external styling. You will see here, you will see on my sidebar, here I have, you see on my sidebar where I have this file here called style.css. I just created it. So I'm going to delete it and then show you how to create yours. So you click on this icon here, this new file icon. And when you do, it will give you like an input box where you type style.css, right? Style.css, this will open a blank CSS file, right, with the .css extension. And then, so now, if we put in any style in here, which I'm going to do for testing purpose, so this time now, we did something here. We called, we use the class selector to select out this HTML tag. What about element selector? Let's see what happens if we use the element selector. Now, I'm going to implement body is an element, right? And if we can remember, body basically means the beginning to the end of a web page, right? What you see, what you get, the style and everything is being done inside the body. Now, we're going to style the body. So I'm going to give a body a background color. When you visit MDN Docs, you're going to learn more about the different commands, right, in CSS and also in HTML. So I'm going to give this a background color of, let's say, give it a background color of dark gray, right? But I gave it a background color of dark gray and nothing is happening here. It's still white. Why? The reason is because in external styling, you have to link that page, that CSS file, right, to your HTML file. And then we'll do that in here by calling the link tag. So you see a list of drop down here, right? You see a list of drop down, you see link atom, then link CSS, right? But it's actually, if you click on link, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get link real style sheets, right? You're going to get link real style sheets, meaning the type of file you want to link to your HTML, which is a style sheet, right? Which is cascading style sheet for CSS. And then you're going to see an empty href. If you remember, we have an href here in this A. Like I said, href, the job of an href attribute is to link. That's the job. So now you're going to find an empty href here, and you manually have to now implement your style file. So if you put in your // it's going to give you this option, right? You choose from it, and then shortly we'll see our styling, right, just came into effect, right? That is how you can link your CSS to your HTML file. So quickly, I'm also going to take this out. So I show you an automatic way of doing this, right? Like for rapid development and efficiency. So again, you're going to put in, you see the styling just left. So you're going to put in link, right? When you put in link, you close. Oh, sorry about that. Remember I talked about Emmet yesterday for code completion. If you put in link, right, in VS Code, once you save your file with the .html extension, if you save your file with the .html extension, it's going to give you a list of drop-down options, right? Now, in this case, now we're just going to go straight to CSS, right? We'll go straight to CSS. Guess what happened? We just have style.css here automatically because it's detecting when you put CSS now. Okay, fine, we need to connect the CSS file, and then it detects and finds style.css in the root of your file tree, right? In the root here. So the root of your file tree means when you go into your folder, you find a list of files in there. So that first stage you find those files, that's called the root. So now you now have that there. Now let's implement the power of Flexbox now to see what happens when we run our flex command in CSS. So shortly, I'll also make you understand something. When designing a nav bar, right? When designing a nav bar, what makes a nav bar? So for example, you go on your website and you see the logo, the name, right? And you see home, about, contact, and all of that. That is known as a nav bar. So when designing a nav bar, the main layout tool that is being used is Flexbox, right? So now we're going to go on and start implementing Flexbox now. So we have our unordered list, the UL element. We're going to do UL element here. So we have unordered list now. Now, initially we've done class, right? Now I want to use the ID selector. So let's see what happens, right? So let's call this nav, right? Let's call this nav hyphen bar, right? So let's call this that. Now I'll go down to my CSS file, and then I'll click. So in order to identify your ID selector in CSS, you need to use the you need to use the hashtag, right? To call it. So you put hashtag, right? And you call nav bar. So you put hashtag call nav bar. Now, when using CSS, when using CSS Flexbox, the first thing you call is display flex. Sorry about that. Display flex. So let's see what happens when we use display flex. Oh, everything is actually aligning horizontally, right? But they are all joined together. Now, I want us to do something. I want to give this a background color. I want to give this a background color so that we can just easily identify that part we're working with. So I'm going to give it a background color of, so what color suits gray? Let's think of something light. So let's give it ivory. So again, a background color of ivory, right? So let's, oh wow, okay. So now we now have our we now have our layouts aligned horizontally as we want, right? Now we need to start implementing some other Flexbox code to help in aligning this properly, right? Now, first of all, I'm going to give our nav bar just a height, right? Just give it a height, going to be the height of let's say 40 pixel, right? See what it does. Oh wow, so it just like increased, right? So can go as far as even increasing it. So there are other types of CSS units of measurement, right? We also have RAM, right? So we can give it, let's say six RAM, right? And then, oh, it's that large, right? It's that large. So they all work in different way. So remember, when you visit MDN docs, right, it's going to give you more information on these units of measurement. Because of time, we're just going to like cover the main important topics of today. So now let's align these items. No, it's not looking nice. It's not looking nice. Let's align them in a proper manner, right? In a proper way. So now I'm going to say, I'm going to call this, I'm going to say, let's give this a justify content of the different types, right? Let's try space between. Let's see what happens, right? Oh, space between basically gave us space between each items, right? Gave us space between each items, right? So let's also try um, space around. Let's see what happens. Let's try space around. Let's see what happens. Space around. Oh, so if you see the difference between space between, so let's go back again. Space between, right? It's so that the at the edge, if you look at item 4 is actually just staying at the edge, right? Because there is no space between the items, right? For space between, it creates space between each items, right? So let's go back and implement space between. oh sorry, space around. So you see space around gives us, right, the space between around those items, right? So now there are different ways or different patterns in terms of like having your items listed out in different ways. We have another one called, so if I go back and then I implement the space around back, I can go and use a different one. Let's say flex direction, right? Let's say flex direction. Flex direction, we can say column, right? And let's see what happens. Using flex direction column, it takes it from the horizontal view down towards a vertical view. So let's imagine building a website that has a nav bar, right? And then when you go on on some website, when you go on mobile mode, mobile view, it actually appears in a vertical manner, right? Where you have that drop down, right? When you click on the menu, the hamburger menu bar, then you have that drop down. So that's one of the way or the time that flex direction is being used. So you can see how rich these tools are, right? You can see how rich they are. We can also implement another thing called align items, right? You see these items are being aligned to the side. What if we can take that to, let's see if we can take that to the center. I don't know. Let's just see if we can do that, right? Oh, wow. So you can see CSS now is actually making our item, right, using the Flexbox tool, aligning them towards to the center, right? So this is just the basic use case of Flexbox, right? This is one of the basic use case of Flexbox. So we'll go on a break shortly. We'll go on a break shortly, and I'll be back with you. Thank you very much. So welcome back, guys. Thank you for bearing with us for that short break. And also, like, so now I'll be going into implementing grid, right? So we talked about Flexbox, we talked about grid. Now we've seen just a basic use case of Flexbox. What about grid, right? How is it useful? How is it important? So remember, grid is for two dimensions, right? dimensional. So now a quick example: you've gone on platforms like YouTube, right? And then on your browser, when you're trying to when you load YouTube on your browser, you will find that the videos, right, are actually, or those videos are actually aligned in a format whereby it goes from 1, 2, 3, right, and then it goes down to the next video again, and then it starts counting. That is a use case of grid. So I'm just going to implement that for you guys now. So I'm also going to introduce you to another tag in HTML known as div, right? Div is a tag that is basically used for as a container, right? Now I'm going to show you what I mean by it's used as a container. Now we have a div here, and we can give it a class. I'm going to give it a class. I'm going to give it a class of container, right? I'm going to give it a class of container, and then in this class, I'm going to create sub divs, right? So basically, in web development, in the context of web development, we actually call these main div, this container. You actually call it the mother div, and then the next divs that are actually implemented underneath it are known as what? The children or child divs. So I'm going to implement that now by saying I'm going to create a div, right? And then this div, I'll also show you now. So a shorter way of implementing divs in or a shorter way of implementing an element with a class selector to it is by using this. This is just a quick trick. So you put div and you put dot in VS Code. You put the name of your class. So let's call this class box. You click enter, automatically it's going to create the div class equal to box, right? So in here now we're going to just put box 1, right? So let's just give it a space. So we're going to put in box 1, right? And I can just you can just basically copy this and paste multiple times, right? We're just going to create, let's just create 8 boxes, right? And you see why. Is this up to 8 or is it even more than? Let's see 2, let's see 3, let's see 4, let's see 5, let's see 6, let's see 7, whoa, and let's see 8. So right on time. So now we already have 8 boxes. Already have 8 boxes. Sorry about that. Already have 8 boxes now created. Now these are just appearing as text, right? We're going to style it in a way that it actually aligns as a box. Now we're going to go into our CSS file, and what we do, we're going to go down here and then call our class for this particular tag, which is called container, right? So you call this class here. So you're going to come in here and then put in dot container. Remember, we use dot for classes. So dot container, and then we're going to open the curly brace. So remember, in CSS, when you're writing CSS code, you call the class name or the element or the ID, and then the next thing you pass into it known as what? Curly brace. So you pass in the curly brace. So we're going to call our container tag, but right now we're not going to style our container, right? We're not going to style the container. We're first of all going to give these individual boxes, right, specific styling to make them stand out more, right? Like I said before, I want to make them appear like a box, a square. So we're going to do that by calling box, which is the name of our class. So do that. We're going to say we're going to start to give it a width. Remember, we have on the unit of measurement here in CSS. We're going to give it a width of 100 pixels, and then we're going to give it a height of, let's say 70 pixels, right? Now you're not seeing anything. Oh wow, okay, you can see the height now since the height just entered, but you're not seeing this appearing as a box because we don't have colors actually on them, right, as the background color. So we're going to give it a background color. We'll give the background color of, let's give it the background color of yellow, right? Let's see what happens. So now we have series of available. So one must think that these things are joined together, right? So how are they separate? How are they different? Now, to create the difference, we're going to put something known as a border. Let's give it a border. So we're going to give it a border of, let's say, 4 pixels with a color of black, right? So we call it black, right? So let's see what happens, right? So, um, so I forgot to implement something. Forgot to implement something known as so the reason why nothing is actually displaying because what type of border are you giving it, right? Is it a thin border, a thick border, something solid, something visible enough for us to see? So we'll put in solid. So we'll put in solid. Shortly we'll see. Yes. So shortly we've seen the implementation, right, of that particular border. So I'm just going to set this to 1 pixel so it's not that big, right? So now let's implement our grid style in a container. So now we'll set the display like the Flexbox, but this time we'll set the display to what? Grid. Remember when we did Flexbox and we set the display to flex, you saw everything aligned horizontally, right? In here with grid, it's aligning as it is, like nothing happened, right? But we're going to change that. So now we're going to implement something known as the grid template columns, right? Grid template columns, right? Now in grid template columns, we're going to call one FR, which stands for like taking of the space, and that one FR, right? So if you can see how this aligns. So we can go as far as even adding more. We can go as far as even adding more FRs to it. So another one FR. You see it aligns thrice, right? But this is like wrong practice, right? This is bad practice in the sense of making or aligning your okay. What if we want to make this align in a 4 level, right? What if we're trying to make it like align 4 ways, right? So we we eliminate that practice, right? We eliminate that practice by using a an inbuilt function in CSS, right? Known as repeat. So what this repeat does for us, is we can set this to like say we can set this to like how many layouts we want it to be. So let's say 4, right? And then we'll give it one F arrow, which F arrow stands for fractional unit. So we'll give it one F arrow. You see it aligns in 4 ways, right? 4 formats, right? So we can take it back and say let's set it to 2, right? Let's see what happens, right? See, it changes back to two patterns, and then we'll go back again and let's change it now to 5. Let's see what happens. So if you're wondering what the fractional unit does, it takes the available space, right, to position our content, right? That's what it does. Now we can go as far as let's set this back to just three ways. Okay, so we can go as far as also implementing something known as a grid gap, right? Implement something known as grid gap. So when we do that, we can give it is 2 pixels, right? Give it 2 pixels. The grid gap handles the amount of space we have between our items, right? You can see it changes, right? You can give it, let's give it 20 pixels, right, for our grid gap. Then you see the space that actually takes place between one box and the other box beneath it, right? So that is the way we implement grid in terms of layout styling. So today we covered layout styling, We also covered we covered layer styling. We also covered some of the practical sessions of like styling our elements using a different CSS selector and using a different styling mode. So now we'll come to the end of today's session. We'll come to the end of today's session in studying about CSS, studying about how we can design the layout of our web page and implement those styling commands using the layout tools like Grid and Flexbox. And in more sessions to come, right? For the rest sessions we still have left, we're going to see how we can now take this knowledge, right, and then put it into creating and designing a, a beautiful web landing page. So thank you very much for joining this session. I appreciate it. And once again, I'm your instructor for this session and I go by the name Prince Will. So thank you very much. Take care of yourself.